Welcome to the latest episode of the podcast that wouldn't die. I'm your host, Kevin. With me, as always, is Aaron.
Hey!
This week, we'll be discussing the classic horror drama movie. I don't even know what it is. Eyes Without a Face. Or as we
Got
call
no
it,
human race.
Les Yeux Sans Visage.
Oh, you sound so French, Kevin. I thought it was Marie Chevalier there for a minute.
That's right. Go ahead and go to our page on Facebook at The Podcast That Wouldn't Die. Go to our page on Twitter at TPodcastTWDie. Email us at thepodcastthatwouldn'tdie@gmail. You can subscribe on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts, etc., etc. And Aaron, you also have a Twitter account.
The Cult of Aaron at Twitter.
So be sure to send her a what's up and how you doing and all that good stuff.
Yeah, identify why you're contacting me, because if you just send me like a skeevy message that just says, "Hey, you look so pretty," I'm pretty much not going to respond and may in fact block you.
Well,
so
she doesn't know.
Try to reference the podcast in some way.
Because it could be a 90-day fiancé kind of situation, is what we're saying.
Is your wife going to tote an egg for me?
This is too much information.
90. I'm just going to stop. 90-day fiancé. In any of its form, before the 90 days, during the 90 days, 90 days the other way. If you like just dumpster fires,
This is it. This is the most horrifying thing you'll see this holiday season.
It's much more terrifying than Eyes Without a Face. For sure.
Oh, sweet Jesus. Now, this movie was on all the lists of 100 horror movies you have to see.
I think I found 3 more lists today trolling around the Twitter. And yes, it's there. It's like a 98 on Rotten Tomatoes.
Yeah. I mean, it's considered literally a classic. It's from 1960. It's a French film with subtitles, so it's like an art film.
That makes it classy.
It's very classy. Will you give us the tour of the show? Tell us what it's about.
Basically, let me just break it on down for you. Like, daddy, car accident.
Oh, God.
Daughter has no face. So he's a doctor. So he, of course, be experimenting on random pedigree dogs, has come up with a plan of stealing the faces off of blue-eyed women and crazy gluing it down on his daughter's mug. As we may have guessed, that kind of technology was not around in 1960, so it didn't go so well. In the end, he perished as like Ramsay Bolton, chomp. And the creepy girl without a face, we don't even know what the hell happened with her. We don't know. That's it. Boom. But French, so it's classy.
Yeah, pretty much. Now, I have to ask, why was it important that they were blonde hair, blue eyes, when those aren't the part that they're taking?
Yeah, that makes no sense. I literally wrote that down. Why does it matter their eye color if you're peeling their face off?
Yeah. Eyes without a face.
Yes.
Got no human grace.
And something else about that. In the beginning of the film, we see that these people dump in a body, and a man goes to the morgue and identifies a body by the face, which has no face, and says, "Yes, that's my daughter."
Right.
We learn later that he was false identifying one of his victims as his daughter, so no one would be looking for her.
Like the real father was knocking on the door saying, "Oh, I'm here to check out the body too." No need, sir.
No need, because it's so easy to identify a face that doesn't have a face with only eyes.
Yep. So he's basically
no birthmark. Excuse me. I don't need to look for a birthmark or hair color or toenails. I can just look at the face without a face, and decide who that is.
It's very upsetting. Basically, yeah, like you said, the father. Okay, the scientist doctor guy, his wife died 4 years ago, and his daughter was in this horrific car crash that he seemingly caused because he's a lousy driver.
He's a
Basically.
lousy driver. He was driving like a maniac. He's French, so he
Yep.
probably had a little vin with his déjeuner.
As they do.
As
they're
they
prone to
do.
do.
Oui.
So her whole face is effed up. It's totally scarred and defiled.
Except for perfect circles around her eyes. It looks like someone has just placed strips of liver on her face.
Basically. Yeah. It's like Hannibal Lecter in that one scene.
Yes.
That's basically
as a
what it
matter
is.
of fact.
So is in order to not offend anybody, the doctor makes his daughter wear like a crazy mask all the time, like this white mask, like kind of a Phantom of the
porcelain.
Opera, perhaps.
Yes, she looks like Mrs. Phantom of the Opera, which is
Yep.
also French. So
Yeah.
maybe they could have made the sweet love together and had deformed babies.
That's correct. Because if you have a deformed face, you have to mate with someone else who has a deformed face. One thing I will say, though, it's a black and white movie, which means half the time I couldn't tell she was wearing a mask. Because there's a white mask, just looked like a normal human face to me. Because it was like modeled over her face, evidently.
Oh my God, because I kept staring at it because it's clearly a cast. This
Right.
isn't, I went to Michael's and paper mache'd something up. It's clearly cast from a human face.
Right.
Because I was looking at it, I'm like, is it really just her face and they maybe put a seam around it to
I
make
think
it
that's
look
what they-
like a mask?
That's one of the comments I was looking at, one of the trivia from IMDb. They talked about how the mask that they would have in their hand and say, hey, put on the mask, hon, looked like different. It looked bigger and heavier, whereas when she was allegedly wearing it, it looked like a little bit too nice. Like it could have just been makeup and, a little prosthetic or something.
I think it really is a mask because near the end, the lips would move. But there was no motion anywhere else. I mean, the lips would part. So I think it is. They probably I think it's a real mask. And I think maybe there was just some motion in the jaw, but it's too perfect. It's too perfect.
Yeah.
I mean, it couldn't be somebody, no matter how much Botox they start stabbing at you with, you don't have that just pure frozenness. I just can't imagine.
Was it just me, or in retrospect, she kind of looked like Mia Farrow circa Rosemary's Baby a little bit?
Yes, I was thinking that exactly. She's like the little waif.
Yep.
She's got the short haircut.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She always seemed overdressed, too. She's always wearing these kind of flowing gowns to lounge
first
around.
Of all,
Go for it.
It's French.
That's how they roll.
And Givenchy designed all the gowns.
Wait a minute. Givenchy?
So oui.
That's all you had to say.
That's it, baby. That's what. As soon as I saw her walking around with that high collar, perfectly high in the back and cracked in the front, I was like, "Oh, this ain't no Hammer Studio schlockety McSchlock for sure."
No, not at all.
The French are making it fancy as hell.
One thing that kind of struck me right out of the gate, like when the credits are rolling, half of the soundtrack for this movie seemed like it was filmed at a carnival.
That
it was
kaleidoscope.
I was like, is this truly terrifying?
I was Googling the crap out of that. I'm like, what the hell is it with the kaleidoscope? I think it's some kind of wacky European thing. Is it supposed to be like confusion? Because in America, that's annoying as hell.
Yeah. That's what it did. That's what it did for me. It's a cultural thing. That is the national song of France, I believe.
Yeah, it's replaced Le Marchand with.
Well, they do like Jerry Lewis, so I mean, everything is suspect at this stage of the game.
We'll simply refer to it instead of Kaleidoscope as the Jerry Lewis theme song. Although I will tell you, there's another movie that I actually like, The Third Man. And there's this crazy instrument called the zither.
Yep.
And it is all through it. I went to the Third Man Museum when I was in Vienna. And as soon as you walk in, it's that crazy music. I was like, if we find the Eyes Without a Face Museum, there's going to be a big kaleidoscope in there. Terrible.
So
is it usually... you can't have Europe without weird carnival music?
It's hard to say. I think that's the way it goes. So, okay, you got the crazy doctor who's desperately trying to repair his daughter's face. You stealing the faces of other hot co-eds, essentially. Is that basically what it is? But he's got like his Renfield, right? He has Louise, who was a former patient of his.
He fixed her face.
Right. Evidently, she had kind of a jacked face as well. They don't explain it. They say, oh, yeah, your face is messed.
Was she in the accident, too? I was wondering about that.
Could be. No, I don't think so. I think she was just an ugly person. I think it's really when it comes to that, she was hideous.
I thought it was an accident. All right,
I don't remember. No one knows. So, but the thing about it is she looks okay, but she has a scar across her neck that she hides with these crazy pearl chokers.
Yes.
Which will become important later in the movie, evidently.
Yeah.
So she's the one dragging the body down to the Seine River and just tossing her in.
Yeah, she's like the beard, man. She's the one that lures
She's the beard, exactly. She is. She's hanging out at the local like coffee shops, hanging outside campus, listening into conversations because she's trying to kidnap another hot chick so they can steal her face.
Paris is a big city. Yeah. Girls from the country go to LA looking for jobs, and she's like a mother figure. She hones in just like a good serial killer would, and knows exactly what to say to get them out into the country.
Yeah, it's a sad situation. So
instead of the night stalker, she's like the day stalker.
Right. Good thing is we learn all about these characters because they promptly go to the funeral of the doctor's daughter. Remember, the doctor's daughter's not really dead, but he identified one of his victims as his daughter. So a couple of randos are sitting there chattering away like, oh, yeah, sad thing about that guy. His wife died 4 years ago. Now his daughter died, and that's his crazy assistant. She's a foreigner.
Foreigner.
I had to look at him like, how she sounds French to me. It's
that one girl was Swiss. The last girl was Swiss, but the Swiss speak French and German.
I looked it up. The actress who played Louise, the foreigner, she's Italian.
Yes, so this is like a joint Italian-French production.
Yes, so I guess if you speak French with an Italian accent, other French will notice, but silly Americans, it slides right by. We're oblivious. I'll take your word for it. I'll tell you what, I had to, even though the subtitles were on, I had to turn up the volume because these crazy French names, it was like, what is the doctor's name? Can you pronounce it?
Oh, wait, I wrote it down, but now I don't have it in front of me. Tell me.
Genessier or something like that?
Genevieve Dior.
It was something like that. And then the daughter, her name was Christiane. Now they had Edna. There was an Edna thrown in there. I can handle the Edna. Edna I got. So they kidnap poor Edna, who's Swiss. Basically, they say, "Oh, you're looking for a place to stay here? I'll take you to this estate in the country." And she immediately is like, "I can tell something's wrong here."
Yeah, something ain't quite right.
Well, it's like they roll in there and there's all those crazy dogs barking nonstop, which they don't explain for 3/4 of the movie.
Well, for God's sakes, my neighbors got their damn dog in their backyards barking nonstop. Should I assume they have a bunker?
Probably. It is Bakersfield, for goodness sake.
It is Bakersfield.
So they ether her and then promptly slice her face off and put it on Christiane.
Graphic detail. Were you worried they were going to run out of forceps since you had to have one every inch around their entire face?
It was pretty rough. I'm not going to lie. So he draws the line around her face and around her eyes. And then you see, at first it looked kind of cheesy because it was like clearly he had the scalpel. It was like a paintbrush, basically, going around her face. And you're like, oh, this isn't too bad. But I swear to God, the forceps scene where he's like prying the skin off, I was like, okay, do I have to watch the entire procedure? We get the idea. It was pretty rough.
It was like hanging out in the viewing window at like USC Medical
Oh
Center.
yeah, it was. It was. It was rough around the edges. So he puts the face on Christiane, and she looks okay.
She
right?
does. She looks like Mia Farrow. She looks fantastic.
She looks good. But the doctor quickly notices, "Did you put rouge on today, my dear?" I'm doing my French accent. She's like, "No, father. No rouge." And immediately he knows, okay, so your body's rejecting your face.
Oh, and then they did this slow cut
no.
as it slowly starts getting rotten. The putrefaction is beginning.
Yeah. At 20 days. At
I don't know why
25 days.
Yeah, why couldn't they save the forehead? That wasn't rotten.
I don't know. What's funny is it's like clearly rotten. And they're like, we're just going to leave it on there for another 30 days if that's cool. Wait till it totally decomposes. Oh, we have to remove it now. Good
Does that
times.
smell bad?
So I don't think I'm having my morning tea and crumpets with old rot face. You know,
Now,
she can go eat in her room.
Now, let me ask this question.
Please.
Now, when you're doing some kind of a transplant, don't you have to have raw flesh to raw flesh for a connection to exist? So how much face she got left? Because don't they have to then peel back some more every time on her face?
It's hard to say.
It's not like shaving your legs. He's got to get in there and slicing and dicing on her.
It's pretty rough. It's pretty rough. It's hard to say. Look, in all my years at medical school, we did not cover the heterograph. Although they talk about earlier, he's at like a conference talking about transplants and how you have to subject them with X-rays to get the radiation to fight back the antibodies. And then if that doesn't work, you have to do total exsanguination. You have to drain all the blood. This doesn't seem like a good idea at all. I'm not a
think
doctor.
Any of this is correct medicine, even for the 1960s.
Right.
So you're gonna burn it with radiation.
Yeah.
So even if it takes in like I don't know, a year after the leukemia kicks in,
right?
Come on, man.
My face is radioactive. I'm X, the man with the X-ray face.
There you go. That's why her cheeks were rosy. It was like Nagasaki in her face.
Yeah, it's a sad situation.
Oh,
so
God.
what's her? Okay, so Edna is now locked in the basement with just bandages over her face because she doesn't have a face anymore. Thanks, doctor.
Thanks, doctor. It looked kind of rock and roll, though.
Yeah. So then Louise comes in there to bring her breakfast. Totally turns her back on the girl. I was like, are you asking for it? I mean, the girl grabs a wine bottle because they're French. You know, even your prisoners get a bottle of wine, evidently.
With a baguette.
With a baguette. She hits Louise on the head with the bottle and tries to make her escape, which includes throwing herself out the window on the second floor. Crack. Poor Edna.
Yeah,
we
it
hardly
kind of reminded me of Fargo, where they kidnap that lady and she's running around until she knocks herself out.
It's basically where they got it, is my understanding.
I believe it. At least I'm going to say that's where.
That's right. One thing I noticed though, when she is laying there, her dead body's laying there. They zoom in on her face, and her eyes, her pupils are like totally dilating and opening and closing. It was kind of creepy. They did it.
It was French. Their tricky ways.
In their damn tricky ways. So. Okay, we later figure out.
I will tell you though, her running around, the way they bandaged her up, that was kind of creepy and rock and roll.
It was. It definitely had its moments.
I mean, this is not my favorite movie for damn sure.
No,
but
not
there
close.
were some cool visuals. I will give it that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's like they were obviously, talented filmmakers, talented actors, things like that. I just truly did not find it particularly scary in general.
Well,
you know what I mean?
Some claim it's not a horror. It was not meant to be a horror movie.
Right. Basically, let's just cut through it, and then I can get to all of our juicy facts here.
Go for it.
So the cops and Christiane's fiance, who Christiane has been calling and not speaking. What was his name? Philippe or whatever his name. I don't remember.
It doesn't matter.
Henri. Jacques. It was one of those names. So they're suspicious. So they make a shoplifter dye her hair and go undercover at the clinic where the doctor works, figuring she kind of looks like these girls who've gone missing. So the doctor takes the bait. They grab the new girl. They train her up, and they're about to cut her face off. But Christiane has a change of heart, or she loses her mind, or something happens.
She is complicit in all this nonsense, and she's creeping around there like a spider. Before, you never really knew how much she knew. In this scene, you know what she knows.
Well, she was sitting in like a lounge chair,
she
like
was
waiting.
Like a lounge chair. She looked like a freaking spider. She is so creepy. Yeah. She should have died in the car accident. So they all should have burned to death. She is complicit. She is creepy.
Right.
And that mask only makes her look 1,000 times creepier.
I mean, that's kind of the thing, right? It's like early on, you kind of suspected she's a good person, but her dad's nuts and is trying to fix her face desperately. He doesn't care about the consequences.
Right.
And you thought she was kind of conflicted about it. But when she thought she had the good face, she was cool. She was like, that sounds good to me. When do I get to meet up with Philippe again?
Because at first I assumed she didn't realize what was going on. That they were murdering people for this.
It's right. It's hard to say. So she frees Paulette, I guess was her name. She the new hot co-ed.
That's a French name.
Something like that. Cuts her loose. Louise comes in and says, Christiane, no. And she takes a scalpel to the throat, right?
Boom! Not even a consequence. Not even stand back. It was like, I'm not even going to say anything. I'm just going to take the scalpel and go up to the hilt right in your throat. Without a word.
Kills her. The Paulette escapes. Crazy Christiane now starts freeing all the dogs. They finally explain why there are like 40 German Shepherds chained up who are barking constantly.
Okay, first of all, you're totally wrong. It's like some purebred zoo because almost every dog was some purebred there was like Mastiffs and Great Danes and the whatever.
There's definitely some Bergers.
Whatever big crazy dog is at Westminster is there.
Well, they explained earlier in the movie that people just release their dogs they don't want anymore in the woods near the clinic. So they, for some reason, just bring the dogs over to
it's
the
like
doctor.
a pound. And they just happen to have an ancient kennel that holds like 12 pens or more.
Right. So what we find out is that he uses the dogs as his guinea pigs, essentially. He does the transplants on them first, and it seemingly works, I guess, on the dogs.
I would have liked to see the dog transplant. So is there a German Shepherd face on a poodle somewhere?
Could be.
Why must be because he must have, if he starts on them, then there's all these, there's a collie on a Mastiff or something.
Yeah, could be.
Let's see that.
So Crazy Christiane frees all the dogs who promptly run out and eat the doctor, chew him up. His face is all messed up.
He's the eyes without a face.
He's the face without the eyes, evidently. So there's also like a giant cage full of doves for no reason.
Of course, there's a reason. This is where we get all Frenchy. So she releases the doves. If you notice, all of a sudden now she's glowing with light. She has redeemed herself. She's an angel. It's a symbol of peace. The doves fly away. Oh, you aren't going to see that in your Hammer films.
She's like a one-winged dove. She's like a one-winged dove. Anyway, earlier, I have to say this. I forgot this part. There's a scene where the doctor's about to start slicing off Paulette's face, but the cops show up at the clinic. So Louise comes in there and whispers in the doctor's ear. Why does she have to whisper?
Yeah, who's going to overhear? The dogs?
The dogs or the patient who's unconscious in front? It's like, I had to whisper. The police are outside. Okay. Good times. Okay. It just seemed like a bizarre choice at the time. That's all I'm saying.
I will say there's some things in here that don't make sense, and I don't know if it's because of all the choices they had to make. Because there's the Italian censors, the French censors, the German censors, the British censors.
We can get into that. You want to get into? Let's go to the next step where we talk about the behind the scenes.
Oh yeah, Kevin's trying to control my gibberish by coordinating what we talk about and when we talk about it.
That's correct. I am very much so. Now, like you were saying, is like this is originally a book called Eyes Without a Face, and they wanted to obviously bring that book to the big screen. But what they said is, there's some things here, if we want this to be a success, we have to get rid of. Okay? The French censors don't want too much blood. Okay?
Right.
So don't make it too bloody. You can have a little bit, but don't make it too bloody. Okay, check.
As it is, people were fainting just from this nonsense.
We're going to get to that. So then for the British censors, you cannot abuse any dogs. They don't like animal cruelty over there in Britain. Okay, we'll limit that.
I thought they eat horse in Britain. Oh,
they do, but not the dogs.
No, not the dogs.
Can't. People love their dogs more than they love their people. It's a sad situation.
The German censors, what was it? They don't want
no mad scientists.
No mad scientists. They're deeply offended.
Deeply offended.
I mean, everything else, I'm like, oh, okay, I can see that. I can see that. What? No mad scientists?
It's a leftover from World War II, I think. They don't want any kind of human experimentation. Yeah.
It's a Mengele reference.
It's rough. So they had to like trim all this stuff out of the movie, which means the doctor who's doing all this stuff, they like go out of their way to try to make it like, well, I can kind of see where he's coming from. He was awfully nice to that boy who was sick at the clinic.
Yeah, I mean, originally the whole story is really supposed to be focused around the doctor and his madness. And, and to get past the censors, they kind of flipped it around, and now it's all about her.
Right, it's all about Christiane, the woman, the faceless woman.
It's just a dutiful doctor who is misled.
That's exactly right. But what's interesting what you said, in spite of all these things, they did in Scotland, 10 people fainted to the point where the director, whose name I'm going to butcher, Georges Franju, said, "Now I know why the Scottish wear kilts."
Because they're women? Is that what he's saying?
That's what it is. I think I messed up the quote. It's something along those lines.
No, I think that's the quote. Yeah, the director prior to this had only done documentaries. Kind of interesting.
Yep. So, good stuff. John Carpenter, who went on to do, obviously, Halloween, the mask that Michael Myers wears was inspired by the crazy mask that, what's her name? Christiane wears in this movie.
Right. The face is not, expressionless. And the movie Face Off.
Oh, God, that's right.
And the movie Face Off is from this, which is also a pretty shitty movie. By the by,
I will go to the mat for Face Off.
Is this a Nick Cage thing, or are you just heavily into Travolta?
You got Travolta. You got Nick Cage. It's a John Woo film. It was. And if you don't know Face Off, there's a terrorist who's gone into a coma, but he set a bomb somewhere. So to find out where the bomb is set, Travolta has to take his face and switch it with evil terrorist Nick Cage to go undercover to find out what happened with the bomb. But then Nick Cage awakes and steals Travolta's face. So now the whole movie, there it is.
He picked it out of the wastebasket and threw it on, which basically you got the same reaction as Eyes Without a Face when it was like perfect and no scars.
Yeah,
I remember sitting in that damn movie at the theater where I paid money, going, "Oh Jesus."
You remember your reaction?
Exactly. I was like, "Oh, it's all downhill from here."
Well, that's the thing. It's like in this movie, they steal the woman's face, but when she takes after the surgery, her face looks like her own face because it's still her bone structure. It's still her,
right.
Her facial structure is still hers. For some reason, in Face Off, if you take off the skin, your whole face structure changes to match the skin,
And,
evidently.
and your body swells up because Nick Cage is fairly trim, where
Yep.
Travolta fluctuates wildly.
That is true. Sad situation. Now there's also a second reference to Eyes Without a Face and Face Off, because at the end of the movie, the thrilling conclusion, there are doves. Doves
Oh, Jesus.
that show up for no reason at all. Why are there doves all over the place?
But
Who
the
could
question
say?
is, do the doves cry?
When
Do,
doves
do,
cry. That's right.
Do.
It's very sad. So we talked about the crazy censors in Europe. When it came to America, censors hit it anyway. I guess they really cut down the face slicing scene.
You're talking about when it was released in the 60s.
Yes, it was
Not
released.
when it was released in 2003.
It was released in 2003.
Yeah, they re-released it.
Yeah. Yes, no. When it was originally came to America back, it was like 62, but it wasn't even called Eyes Without a Face.
What was
was-
it?
The Horror Chamber of Dr. Faustus, which is weird because there's no character named Dr. Faustus.
I
in the
think
movie.
Faustus is a reference to something else.
Well, there was there was the Marlowe story called Dr. Faustus, which was about
I thought
the
you were
story
going to
of
say
Faust.
Marlboro.
There was the Marlboro Man who helped out. Good grief. So yeah, as you said earlier, the director did not consider this to be a horror story, and I tend to agree with him. He said it was a tale of anguish. It was like desperation. That's what they're going for.
Okay, first of all, there is no sense of desperation anywhere. There's a sense of confusion. It was coming from me. The strange girl who without a face, who just lays on her face all the time.
Yep.
And her father insists she wears this jacked up mask, even when it's just them. Also,
Well,
the idea
yes.
that they just. When was this accident, and where does her fiance think she is?
Dead. Her fiance thinks she's dead.
But that's just at the beginning of the movie.
Well, okay.
It doesn't tell you when the accident happened and what time we're looking at now.
Right. You're right. There's definitely a hole there because she was injured in a car wreck. However,
why if her face is peeled off, otherwise her skin is porcelain.
right.
How come he wasn't injured in any way? Was he drunk? They say the drunk people just bounce around, I guess.
That's what happens. You're right. You're definitely right that there's a question mark there because the father was in the car wreck. So did he immediately just start telling people, "Oh, she's dead," and I don't know where the body is, or
She's dead.
she
And
ran off, or
There'll be no investigation of anything.
or funeral? We're gonna wait till a body washes ashore, and then I'm gonna say, "Oh, by the way, that's my daughter."
Exactly.
I guess. Interesting. Now, sadly or
Yeah, because-
happily,
I
Go
got to
ahead.
interrupt. That first
Interrupt.
body already had the face missing.
that's correct. She was
So they
another
were-
Eyes Without a Face.
Yes, they were already up to no business.
Now, I had never really heard of this movie until fairly recently in my life. What I had heard was the Billy Idol classic.
Eyes
Face.
without a face, got no human race. Which is actually about someone being on heroin, calling you up in the middle of the night. I'm so lonely, come on over, offering sex so they don't have to be lonely.
Now, you might argue these are two totally unrelated stories, have nothing to do with each other, and you'd be wrong. Because Billy Idol, who wrote Eyes Without a Face, was inspired by the movie.
The song, not the movie. He didn't
Sorry,
write the movie.
No, he did not write the movie, as far as I know. He did an uncredited rewrite, as far as I know. He was inspired by the movie to write the song Eyes Without a Face. And if you listen, the background chorus is, let me sing it for you. Les yeux sans visage, which is,
Eyes without a face.
in French, which was the original French title for Eyes Without a Face.
And little known fact, that was Billy Idol's girlfriend at the time singing that.
Yes, the song, it may be about heroin and booty calls, but it was also about the slow decomposition of a relationship between a person and their significant other. So it's ironic that his girlfriend at the time was singing backup on the song. Take a hit, sweetie. So there you have it.
The ultimate crime.
It's a crime against humanity. Do you have any other behind the scenes?
Well, the person who did the screenplay is also the person who wrote Vertigo.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
See, this is what you learn when you Google getting your hair done. You got lots of time for that.
Very nice.
Uh-huh.
Now, here are a couple wacky quotes from the movie.
Are you going to do them in character?
I'm going to do them in the original French.
All right.
So get ready.
Let's see if my high school French still holds up. Go ahead.
No, I will not be doing them in the original French.
Damn you. Damn your eyes.
Dr. Genessier, these first couple are from him. He says, "The future, madam, is something we should have started on long ago." You know that one.
I'm going to get that tattoo.
Write it down. And later, after he's done the surgery on Christian, he goes, "Smile, smile. No, not too much."
That's right. You don't want it to crack and rot off.
And the last one, which I thought was kind of interesting, Christian says, "My face frightens me. My mask frightens me even more."
That's deep, sister.
Isn't that good stuff?
She is a little frightening. You know, when they show her real face just for a moment, it's slightly out of focus, kind of dreamlike. Because maybe she's gone blind from the fire. Maybe she's got astigmatism. I don't know.
Could be.
But she reminded me, remember that Twilight Zone episode where she thinks she's horrible and wishes she looked like everybody else?
Right.
And then we find out Eye of the Beholder.
Yep.
We find out that she's actually beautiful and everybody else has like pig noses.
That's right. I do remember that.
That's what she looks like without her mask. And pig noses also look like chopped liver.
That's exactly right. It's basically somebody just rubbed some gravy on her face. It's a rough scene. I was wondering if they were ever going to actually show her face.
Yeah, I was wondering about that.
They do right before, like Edna snaps out of her ether stupor and kind of opens her eyes, and you see Christiane's blurry face, but it is effed. Let me just say that. It is not in good shape. I don't blame her for wanting a new face.
I had a question about ether. I didn't realize it knocks you out for like 6 hours because it does in TV or in movie land. Because they drug that girl, put her in the operating room, and then just wander around, go back and peel her face off later.
Well, he says, "I'm going to have dinner first, and then I will get to work."
And which is multiple courses. You're going to have some wine, perhaps a after dinner demi-tasse. You know, he was busting out the port before they even started carving her up. So
yeah, that was old bait and switch.
Yeah, it's a lie. Something weird when we first meet Christiane and her wicked stepmother, nanny, whatever the hell that other lady is, Edna. Louise.
Not Edna.
Louise. Did you notice she brought in like a milk bottle with a tube?
Yes, I did see that.
I was like, are they bottle feeding her? Is she sucking that juice out? Does she have a feeding tube in her belly? Because are they saying she doesn't have lips and she's just like a drooling freak? What's going on? Because she can communicate quite clearly.
Look, she's eyes without a face. Okay, that's all you need to know.
It didn't say nothing about the mouth.
Well, like you said, she's constantly putting her face down into the pillows, which are probably totally ruined because they're just covered with viscera and gore.
Seepage from the rotting flesh. They keep putting cadaver faces on her face, which immediately rot off.
That's why he says, look, honey, wear the mask. My upholstery can't take any more of this. Okay.
That's right. The clinic has been slow. And,
It's a sad situation.
yeah. And like I said, this movie, the look is so different. I mean, literally, it's Frenchie wanting to jump on the success of Hammer Studios back in England, which were pumping out schlock horror movies one at a time, like 12 a week.
Yeah, pretty much.
They couldn't make a movie without who are Peter Cushing,
Christopher
Lee, Vincent Price. It was like a machine. And Frenchie was, the French and the English have no love lost. So they wanted to get on, but this looks quite different. Hammer Studios look like the sets are made out of paper mache, whereas everything here is beautiful.
Right.
You go to his clinic and you're waiting outside. I'm like, if I could live in his clinic, I would think I was a millionaire. It's all castles and beautiful things and quite lovely.
So, okay. Would you recommend this movie to anyone?
No.
I don't think I would either.
No, I mean, definitely, if someone's looking for an awesome Halloween costume, if I could get that white mask, people would be bugging for sure.
Well, no one would know what it's from.
But you know what? No one knows what half my jokes are. As they stare at me with their dead shark eyes, I laugh to myself. What's important is I know. I have to explain my Halloween costumes every year.
Lovely.
So I don't care.
Shall we leave the world of Eyes Without a Face?
I don't know. I would, if you're going to watch it, do like the French and drink some wine.
I mean, it's very artistic. It's pretty to look at.
Let's think about this. It's a 98% fresh on Rotten Tomatoes. It is considered in some places one of the finest films ever made.
If you like carnival music, then this is the movie for you.
It is on almost every top 100 list. That's where do you think I got it?
I understand. I had heard of it, and I know it's considered a classic. But who are you going to believe? Me or your own eyes?
Yeah, or your lion eyes.
Yep, exactly. So anyway, thank you for joining us. Don't forget to go to our page on Facebook at The Podcast That Wouldn't Die, our page on Twitter at TPodcastTWDie. Email us. Just an avalanche of correspondence.
Feel free to disagree with us. We might read your letter, but we will mock you.
Yes, we will. So at the podcast that wouldn't die at gmail.com. Obviously, we're on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, etc. And Aaron, etc. And you are on Twitter as well?
I am on Twitter. I am the cult of Aaron. Bonsoir.
Exactly. Arrivederci.
Ciao.